guess one thing that I've been good at throughout my life is kind of taking a step back, trying to be objective and evaluate, my life, and am I doing what I'm supposed to be doing to be on the track that I want to be on? Does this path lead to where I want to go? Because it's so easy to drift off and get kind of distracted.
Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome back, Championship Leadership Podcast. We got Hans Sperling here, currently out of LA. Welcome to the show, Hans. Thanks for being here.
Thanks. Great to be here.
Yeah. Well, Championships Leadership's the name of the podcast. What comes to mind for you when you hear that?
Well, I guess, I'm around a lot of business people. They're my clients and colleagues. And, I think of people, especially say entrepreneurs who, they're alchemists. They make gold out of lead. They take nothing and make hopefully a thriving business out of it. That seems to me like real leadership, tough leadership, hard thing to do.
Yeah, no, definitely. Yeah, I love that. Well, why don't you tell the listener right now that's tuning in a little bit about yourself and kind of the path and journey that you've been on in your life, and kind of how that takes you to where you're at today and what you're up to today.
Sure. Okay. So just to kind of start at the end, I ended up being a business lawyer. I don't do litigation. I don't do lawsuits. I help business people. I advise them set up companies, buy and sell companies, do contracts, that kind of thing. I basically started growing up in a small town in Pennsylvania, very rural. And then my father changed jobs and we started moving all around the world. And excuse me, I came back to the US, went to law school, and wasn't sure what kind of law I would do. I thought I knew, and I did some of what I thought I was going to do, but I started getting into business. My first job had me doing a lot of business contracts and so on, and I really enjoyed it. I learned more and more. I was actually in Japan. I started as a lawyer in Japan.
Oh, wow.
And yeah, just kept going. Eventually came back here to California, and now I have my own practice rather than working in other people's firms.
Very cool. How did you start off in Japan? That's interesting.
Yeah, I'd gotten used to moving all around with my family. And at first I thought, I'm going back to the US, going to law school, and I'm going to basically stay in the US. But very quickly I got the itch to move again. And so I wanted to go to one of the big cities in Asia. And I looked around and I just happened to get a job in Tokyo first. So I went. I thought I'd be there maximum 3 years. I ended up being there 7 years.
Okay.
Yeah.
Very cool. What's it like to live over there?
It's pretty amazing. I guess it's cliche to say everything's different, but it's the things that you don't expect to be different, that you take for granted. But it's a fascinating place. I think it's almost a better place to live or visit longer term, like if you have an opportunity to spend a month there or something, because it's not really a tourist spot. You don't really go to the Eiffel Tower and go to the Louvre. It's not like just points you go to. It's more of a thing of getting to know the city a little bit, eating the food, kind of seeing how they do things. So it was fascinating.
Oh, that's very cool. Yeah, absolutely. So what who are some championship leaders or people that have really impacted you, and more so, what are some of the characteristics that really have stood out about those people, those leaders, that maybe you've taken to help mold who you are as a leader?
Mm-hmm. Interesting question. I had a business coach, and she had us do different exercises and so on. And one of them was find someone who I don't remember what the word was, respect, admire, that you consider to be successful, and find out how they did it, find out how they see the world. And for me, I'm interested in Formula One car racing. I don't get to follow it much now, but I used to.
Yeah.
And Michael Schumacher, of course, was the great 7-time world champion. And so I got a biography of him, and I was reading up. And I've heard this about some other champions that they get to a point where they realize that there's two things: there's winning and losing. There's not a third thing, which is losing, but with a really good excuse.
Yeah, right.
Even if the excuse is true, like even if it's a legitimate, true excuse. So, in Formula One, the tires were too soft, the engine didn't have enough power. Those are the kind of things you hear drivers say when they don't perform the way they want to. And they're probably true. Maybe some of them are just kind of BSing, but let's assume that it's usually true. But there's no trophy for I would have won if my engine had more power or something like that. So Schumacher went to Ferrari, and they basically built the team around him so that he could influence all those things. Now, I think he had already won 1 or 2 championships, so he had a fair amount of juice to negotiate that. Yeah. But he realized that that's what you have to do. One thing I read about him is during the season, he would pay attention to, for example, if a leg got tired during a race, because you're constantly braking and shifting, and anything like that he would note. And then in the off season, he had his trainer develop a program to specifically address that. Okay. So he was always tweaking and always finding where's the weakness, my weakness. No judgment, just have to address it. And did that for years. And that really, I try to do that myself. I'm not as good at it as he was, not yet anyway. But that's really the thing that jumped out at me about his kind of leadership.
Yeah, I love that. I mean, that's a great exercise for probably everyone to go through or to do at some point. And because I think a lot of us will read books, but to actually then go and take something, I mean, that would be the goal, right? Mm-hmm. To actually implement or take something from what you've read to help you. And who better to learn from sometimes than, some of the greats. Right. Although I think of people like the older I get, as a parent as well, I just had this conversation with another guest. I was just thinking, we were kind of talking about, I don't know if you're familiar with football, but Tom Brady and Aaron Rodgers. And Tom Brady, he's 45, and it's kind of getting to the point of like, when is enough? I mean, you just lost your family because of football and because of what made him great has been a big part of what's probably not made him great as a father. Right.
Right.
And I can't speak to it because I'm not in his home but I can only imagine as a kid, as a father myself, because I've traveled a fair amount. And I can be disconnected sometimes, but not at the level that he is, or that he's shown to be the quarterback and the champion that he is, right? What it requires from him. And I'm like, well, I guess there's things you can learn both ways, right? How to do things and how not to do some things. So what you want in life.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's the old work-life balance thing also.
Yeah.
But guys like him and Schumacher, they're just at such a high level.
Oh yeah, no doubt.
It's kind of a pity, but you almost have to ask your family to make, that sacrifice. Hopefully they kind of knew when they were getting into it, but it sounds like from what I read, I haven't read very much, but maybe he and, I think her name is Giselle, his wife, had a deal that he was going to quit, and then he looks like he reneged. I don't know. Maybe that's not true. That's from the headlines I read.
Yeah, no, I mean, it seems that way, right? I think, he was going to retire and couldn't resist the urge to keep playing because I get it. You love it. There's nothing else like it. And once you're done, you're done. And it's hard to replace it, but it's hard to replace your family as well. So, I mean, which one do you really want? I guess you make a choice and you live with it. So it seems like that's what they did.
Right.
What about you? So let's get more into you, and what's your vision maybe for what you're doing? It could be business, could be life. I think championship leaders definitely have incredible vision and courage to take action on it. What's maybe the vision for you and what you want to do, or the impact you want to make?
Well, I guess a couple things. For me personally, like I just mentioned, work-life balance. I'm actually not, at least for myself, crazy about that concept, because it sounds like you have work over here and your life over here, and they're in competition. We were just kind of talking about that. I enjoy my work. I like feeling that I'm contributing. And so I think the ideal situation is not that your work takes over your life, but that you feel it's part of your life. It's not this other thing you do or this thing you're obligated to do. It's something you do because you love it and you feel you're making a difference. So there's that place that I'm not quite there, that I have that perfectly set up. I'm always working towards that for myself, but then in kind of the bigger picture, I see what I do as supporting business people, helping them achieve what they need to. I always feel that law provides kind of the infrastructure of business and actually of society in a way. But for example, most basic example, contracts are supposed to be enforceable. You sign a contract, the other side reneges, you're supposed to be able to go to court and enforce it. If you didn't have that basic rule and you didn't have the courts to do it, with a lot of places in the world, you can't rely on the courts and the legal system to provide that. But that's kind of the most basic way. But all, regulation and so on, hopefully if it's done right, it's designed to provide the infrastructure for them. So I see myself as being that intermediary that tries to help them operate in that environment and achieve their goals. And then, their success is my success.
Yeah. Love it. What's maybe have you think of like what I guess I would call a critical moment in your life, kind of fork in the crossroads moment where you've made the decision that you did, which has you where you are today, but had you made a different decision, you'd be in a very different place in life. I think there's a lot of power for those people in those spots right now, trying to make a critical decision, to hear from others and how they decided to maybe help them in a way, come to the decision that they're going to make for themselves. Is there a moment or two that comes to mind for you?
Yeah, what comes to mind is when I graduated college. I got a job, right after, and I was still kind of considering what direction I wanted to go. I was very much into photography. I was the photo editor at student newspaper in college, and I've been doing photography since I was a little kid. So that was one path I really thought, is go into photojournalism or photography. Then at the same time, a lot of my family was in government. So I thought of maybe going that direction. And then I really enjoyed, we had to take one class in international law in my undergrad, and I really enjoyed it. So then I was thinking about studying law, and I like that kind of work, analytical kind of work. So I think that's probably for a lot of people, there where you're at the beginning of your life, really working life or professional life, and you got to make the big decision which direction you want to go. And kind of like we were just saying about those athletes, when you go one direction, there's an opportunity cost. It means you didn't go the other direction. And I ultimately decided to go the law school route, and that was quite different. There was no one in my family who had done that, so I didn't know 100% what I was getting into. But I decided to do that, and I like the way it worked out. You can still do, and I thought of this at the time, I can still do photography. It's not like they take your camera equipment away or something.
Exactly.
Although they do take a lot of your time and energy,
Sure.
There's only so much of that in a day. And so I think I'm happy with that choice. I think it's, in a way, the best of both worlds. If you do something that you enjoy, I was always worried if you go into photography, frankly, making a living. And obviously some people do it. But I can remember some professional photographers came and talked to us in school once, and in college. And there was this one guy, I think he was a stringer for Time magazine, something like that, and or freelance. And he'd won one or two major awards. And I remember he told us, if you're one of those people who needs to know at the beginning of the month where your money is going to come from to pay your bills at the end of that month, this is not the line for you. And I remember thinking, I really want to think he's wrong. I really want to believe that's not true, but I knew it probably was. And some people do okay in those sorts of things, but it's very entrepreneurial. Like you have to create again, kind of something out of nothing. So that kind of scared me. So I wanted something that used what I thought my interests and abilities were, but also, there's a clear path what you do, and you can take care of yourself and your family. And so I went down that path, and I'm happy with it. And I learned all kinds of stuff I never would have learned otherwise.
Right. Well, and part of what you said, I think, is just because you choose one thing doesn't mean you have to give up the other, right? I mean, you can, you potentially may not look exactly how maybe you envisioned it, but you still get to do both, right? So I think that's powerful. That's probably maybe the first time we really, in answering this question that we've asked almost every episode we've had, where we've kind of touched on that. So that's great. As we kind of start to wrap this up, if there's one or two things that you could give to the listener today, that like if they were to take action today and implement today would help move their life forward, what would that be?
I think one thing that I've been good at throughout my life is kind of taking a step back, trying to be objective and evaluate, my life, and am I doing what I'm supposed to be doing to be on the track that I want to be on? Does this path lead to where I want to go? Because it's so easy to drift off and get kind of distracted. And that might be something like the obvious things, like you want to get to this point in your career or whatever, or it could be less obvious. It could be more of a balance thing. For example, if you're kind of goes back to what we're talking about, those athletes, if you're spending all your time at the office working, and is that really lead where you want to go? Or might you find like, Brady that, or apparently going on press reports that maybe that didn't get you where you wanted to go, maybe you ruined something along the way or lost something. So I think that's always a really valuable thing to do. Try to take a step back. Ideally, you have someone in your life, ideally, I guess your spouse or significant other who can help you do that.
Yeah.
Or maybe not. Maybe it needs to be someone a little bit outside, a friend who's not in your everyday life, who can see things really objectively. I don't know, but somebody.
Yeah.
I think that's always a worthwhile evaluation. It's so easy to drift off course.
Absolutely. Yeah, 100%. What's the main way that we could go and learn more about you? And maybe there's even some business owners or people out there that we're looking for the service that you provide. But yeah, what's the main source we can go to for you?
Yeah, the best way to find me is on LinkedIn, Hans Sperling, Sperling Law Corporation. I think if you search that, it'll pull it up.
Okay.
Or my website, Sperling Law Corp, as in corporation, sperlinglawcorp.com. And they're working on a new website for me. Mine's a little dated. So hopefully in a few weeks or a month, the new one will be up. Okay. But in any case, one is up now.
Yeah. Excellent. We'll get that linked up for the listener here. And as you're listening, if you want to continue to listen to more incredible guests like Hans today, please don't go anywhere and stay right here for the next episode. Hans, thank you so much for being here. It was a pleasure to have you on the show, and really enjoyed the conversation.
Me too. Thanks. It was great being here.